Uh, is this
This meeting is being recorded.
I wonder if this is if this is the last one. I think there's another one in
it's in
December.
December. Okay.
Yeah, second week, second Wednesday in December. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
This is the last second.
Last second. Yeah. Perfect.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Organic Agronomy meeting. And for those who are the first time joining this meeting and don't know who I am, as Marla said, my name is Dunlin Wen. I am the Provincial Specialist Alternative Cropping System. I work with the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture, and part of my role is to support organic production in the province. And today's meeting, and we'll discuss about intercropping. We will review the ideas of intercropping or the concept and its benefit and risks. I will also provide a couple of scenarios where you probably can insert an intercrop in your planned crop rotation. When I first start, I always have some kind of trouble to move my slides. Oh, okay, now it worked. The definition of intercropping is a cropping practice that involves growing two or more crops at the same time on the same field. This is a typical definition for that. A lot of times when we go to the seminars or workshop, some people would introduce this as a new practice. Actually, it's not really new practice. I remember Dr. Martin from University of Manitoba, he gave a presentation about intercropping. He looked at the history of intercropping and found that in the northwest China, intercropping has been practiced on almost all the crops for like hundreds of years. And intercropping really need intensive care, and it fits for the small farms with intensive management. An earlier time, if you see this slide, I just found it yesterday, North American Indians in many tribes start growing corns, pole beans, and squash together as so-called these three sisters. And it was a very popular concept in the First Nation community. Not only were these three crops dependent each other during their growth, but also they complement one another nutritionally as well. Like amino acids in corn and beans provide a complete protein needs, and the squash supply beta carotenes and vitamin C. So those kind of things are not new, but we reintroduce this thing. And now I would like to give you some kind of general classification or grouping what intercropping about. The first one is mixed intercropping. Basically, you mix the seeds together. They don't have rows. They don't have even you seed it in rows, but they are all those crops you mix together would grow from same rows. Or some would spread it evenly across the field. And the second is row intercropping, is alternate rows of one crop and another. The photo show over here is a chickpea and a flax. And there's underseeded intercropping, like one crop was underseeded between the rows, and they are not mature at the same time. And another one is a strip intercropping. You basically grow a whole wider rows of those crops, and that normally would fit into your seeder's width. And there are other kind of intercropping as well, something like perennial versus annual intercropping, or vegetable with flowers intercropping, fruit trees with legume, all kind of intercropping concept you could create your own as well if you have an idea want to do it. The intercropping actually, if I try to give an analogy, I try to take this crop rotation on the left side and move it like shake it on all the crops drop onto the ground, and then it would turn in 90 degrees, and then it would turn into intercropping in the same season if we suppress the years into one. So I think this intercropping is actually a condensed form of a crop rotation, like a 2 or 3 years of crop grow in the same year. It would turn this kind of a crop rotation into intercropping. Because it's a similar, the ideas like minor form, condensed form of crop rotation. So many of those benefits of crop rotation are also true to intercrop situation, such as the higher plant resource efficiency. They could effectively use the space, nutrients, and water in the soil. Use the space. And they could share the nitrogen fixation by the legumes. And also, some of the crop would be able to, in the mix, would be able to mobilize the soil phosphorus. And this soil phosphorus, once it's mobilized, it can be used by the other crop, which doesn't have the capability to mobilize the P. So it would increase the soil P use efficiency as well. And also, if you grow 2 crops together, one crop that is a host and support the a vascular mycorrhiza fungi, they would be able to maintain the AMF level in the soil. And later time we will talk about how that AMF help to, crops to use nutrients and water efficiency, increase the crop yield. And the intercropping would also be able to suppress weeds. Basically, they would limit the space of the weeds, so squeeze them into the corner and reduce the water and nutrient supply to the weeds because the competition. And also, they would block the sunlight. And once the intercropping close the canopy, and the light penetration will be greatly reduced. Something like Canada thistle, when the sunlight reduced to 60%, their growth would be shrinked by 50%. And if you could block 80% of light directly shine to the Canada thistle's leaf, they would become so weak, some would die in that year. And natural suppression of insects and pests and pathogens is another benefits of intercrops. Basically, it's modifying the microclimate and suppress the pathogen growth. Through this kind of activities, and diversifying soil microbes community and dilute pathogens in soil, that would reduce the the crop diseases and restrict pest colonization. That's another reason for another factor that would contribute to reduce the pests. And it also, when you have a biodiversity, it's produce a better habitats for natural enemies or preyers for those bad insects. Increase land equivalent use, I think my tongue is not smooth this morning. Increase land equivalence ratio. And basically land equivalence ratio means, you grow these 2 crops, and when you measure the the crop yield, and you would see that they actually produce more than a single crop you would grow, either of the crop you mixed. So when you convert this into land use equivalency ratio, normally the intercrop would have this LER greater than 1. That means you receive more yield, and which would turn into money. And also, this would intercrop would help build soil health, increase the soil biodiversity, and increase the resilience of the system. And here's a diagram I took from the article that was Haas 2022's article. The article entitled "Benefits and Risks of Intercropping for Crop Resilience and Pest Management" is published in Journal of Ecosystem Entomology last year. And I give this kind of web link. So when you receive this presentation, you could click on that, and you would be able to, if you want to, you could read the article. And you could see that, intercropping actually increase the carbon sequestration. All those are good stuff. Supplement food for beneficial insects, increase the biocontrol, and including, pollination as well. Interception of pest host signalings, and some, the pest, when they spread in a monocrop system, there's no barriers. They just eat one crop, next crop is still same. If they're the host of this insect, they continue spread very quickly. But if you have intercropping, and this kind of insects need to jump over another crop to find their favorite food, it will slow down the spreading process. And the same thing for the pathogen host as well. It also, pathogen need to jump over those little barriers to spread to another crop. And some of the crop in the intercrop, one of the crop, well, how do I say that? When you have two crops, one is that particular pathogen host plant, another one is not. So it won't spread directly to the next one. It takes efforts. It takes lots of efforts for the pathogen to pass through. And normally, they would also diversify soil microbes because the root system are different. Some are deep-rooted, other shallow-rooted, and some microbes would like one crop root system and exudates. And others, they have help all kind of soil microbes to thrive. And with all those come together, as what we said earlier, and they would create a greater combined yields per hectare, and which really create a resilience kind of system for the next crop as well. However, it's not always all good. There are some kind of bad side of intercrop as well. I took this photo modifying took this slides from the same publication, and because they are slightly different, so I actually add something over there. The first one is the increased management complexity, and sometimes when you add a crop, it is really difficult. It's not really 1 + 1 equal to 2. Sometimes the complexity is more than 1. And the second is increase the labor requirement. You need to do the seed mixing, and sometimes you need to seed 2 passes. And after the harvest, you also need to separate, and which costs money or labor. resources as well. And sometimes if you have the pest issues in your previous crop, and particularly your intercrop include one of the host of this particular pests, and they might maintain the pest survival the season. And if delete some of those kind of benefits of crop rotation, like reduce the pest reserves thing. And so is the diseases. So if you have a disease, pathogens exist in your soil, and you have a disease hosting crop over there, that probably would maintain the pathogen level for the next crop as well. So you need to consider all those before you decide what crop to follow another. And when you insert an intercrop in your system, consider all those kind of scenarios. And the last one is risk of not select those crops that are not compete with each other. Like they are all shallow rooted and they compete the nutrients, water, the same layer, and then they go compete in the same space and they don't have a place to stretch. So try to find things that they complement to each other, not to compete with each other when you consider the crops. In general principle to select the crops for intercropping include choose the crops that have different light, water, and nutrients need. Some are shed tolerant, or others are grow taller, and they use moisture from deep horizons. They have different root structures. Like moisture and nutrients, they could take those kind of supplies from different layers and select crops that do not host the same pests and diseases. And it's never been good, to put similar kind of crops together as an intercrop. Try to find the crops that are totally different, even their phenology or even their needs for light, everything, roots, moisture for nutrients. Some prefer nitrogen, others would be able to fix nitrogen, something like that. And the third one is pick the crops that complement each other rather than compete. That's what we said earlier. When you do this, you could consider the following factors, like the nutrient balance. Use a shallow root crop to intercrop with a deep-rooted crop, and select a legume crop, intercrop with non-legume varieties. And they are not competing for nitrogen supplies from the soil. And the seeding rate is another consideration when you do this intercropping. There are two types. One is the equal crop, like a 50-50%, and which you basically have two crops that are equivalent 50-50. And you can also use the seeding rate to control a dominant crop, something like, I'm going to grow the wheat at the rate I used to seed, and I put it like 25% of pea in the mix, and because the pea would be able to fill the intercrop spaces, so that 25%. So by end of the year, you probably would have the same kind of wheat yield, and all those pea yield is a bonus. And always remember, you could put a slightly higher seeding rate when you intercrop, because they are, mostly would have different growth characters. They probably use nutrients, water, sunlight at different places. So when you use a higher seeding rate, you actually fully utilize all those kind of natural resources for those crops. And weed control, you need to choose a crop that help control the weed, particularly when your weed pressure is high. And if you have a clean field, doesn't have a huge weeds pressures, then you have more freedom to select crops you want to. And try to, when you select those crops and or seeding or practices, and try to think about choose those ones that fit your existing farm machineries, like seeding equipment, swords or combines. And particularly if you want to, some of those would for some of the crops we choose, they would require a wider row spacing. And if your row spacing in your farm is narrower, most organic farms would have that kind of thing, and choose those ones that fit your equipment. Instead, you have to rent other equipment. And also the post-harvest handling, like cleaning and storage. And I will speak that after. During the intercropping consideration, always think about legumes for organic producers. Because if you think of faba bean or pea or whatever, the legumes, they could potentially put 70 to 120 pounds nitrogen per acre into your soil during that growing season. And it also produces a crop. So that's something you need to consider all the time. Now, I will give you some of intercropping examples. Example one is to increase nitrogen and phosphorus supplies. And the crop rotation could be like this. You always have a cover crop year. Year one, you grow cover crop, and year two, and you could grow a crop that require a lots of nitrogen. For in this case, like a wheat, if you grow wheat following a cover crop, you probably not only get a higher wheat yield, but also have a higher protein concentration, which would give you more return in the second year. And then in the third year, and you actually could grow oats and pea intercrop. And in that case, the pea would be able to fix the nitrogen for itself and leave all the soil available nitrogen for oats. Oats is not a big consumer of the soil nitrogen. So probably you would be able to achieve a better yield of both crop in that case. And then third year, you go back. In fourth year, you go back to cover crops. This is the one thing. And another example is you actually could add another crop in your rotation, before you return to cover crops. Here's examples. First year, you have a cover crop. Second year, you grow wheat. And third year, flax is not also a low nitrogen demand crop compared to others. Well, I shouldn't say that way. Actually, flax does need nitrogen to grow, but the yield is normally low compared to others, compared to, like oats. And so it uses less nitrogen because the yield is low. And then in the year 4, you actually insert another cash crop before you return back to the cover crop. So you could grow oats and pea in fourth year, and then you basically extend your cash crop year, added another cash crop year in your rotation. So which really help you economically. And the last example will be, use intercrop to enhance weed control. And I have been tell this story for sometimes, like year one, you actually grow underseed crop, cover crop, underseed cash crop, sorry, underseed cash crop. You could grow oats underseed the sweet clover. And you could harvest the oats in the fall. And after you harvest the oats, the yellow sweet clover start growing for, about a month. And then they would go into the winter and they are established. Winter won't kill it. And the second year, the yellow sweet clover start take off pretty early. And by July, beginning of July, July 5th to early to mid of July, they start flowering. And that time you could plow it down and then grow a 4i. And a 4i is very competitive. Oh, the second year's sweet clover grows so well, and they would suppress the Canada thistle or other kind of perennial weeds, greatly pressed. And then, plow down this yellow clover for about a month later, you seed 4i, and 4i can be seed, in middle of August to end of August, depends on where your location is. And 4i, as you know, they execute some organic compounds which play allelopathic suppress the Canada thistle, particularly to Canada thistle. So in that case, if the thistle was not suppressed enough by yellow sweet clover, and definitely this 4i would do that in the year 3. And year 3, when you get a good, 4i, and then in year 4, you could add another crop, even the soil nitrogen level has been, some of the soil nitrogen already been taken by 4i, and then you could grow a mustard plus pea. And in that case, mustard would use your soil available nitrogen, and a pea would help itself. In the meantime, the pea would help mustard to gain more like phosphorus because pea would be able to mobilize phosphorus in the soil, which can make the unavailable pea become available to mustard. And this is what I have to say for today. I guess if you got any comments or questions.